Hello, everybody. I'm on with Anya today. Today, we're going to
Hi.
talk about co-collaboration. How do you feel about that, Anya? What's coming up
I
with you with
am
that?
ecstatic. I think that's the right word to use. I am really, really excited. It feels just so synchronized right now, and co-collaboration just seems to be the theme rippling through so many different aspects of awakening right now. And yeah, I'm really, really excited to kind of navigate this next chapter and see what that's going to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. It really feels like there was just one giant fog that was covering all of that up. And as soon as that shifted, I would say especially over the last couple of months, then it was a kind of a really direct drive to be like, okay, it's time to find my soul family. My group is now. I don't want to be doing all this work by myself. It's just not going to work with the collective
Mhm.
overall.
Exactly
For a
that.
long-term stability. And so right now, from what I'm seeing with the collective energy and with self, is that we really need each other to move forward, to move this forward into an ascension process that's where we want it to be.
Yeah, 100%. It exactly what you said. That really like kind of rang home, that feeling of I don't want to do this anymore on my own. I mean, it's no secret. You have to excuse the garden tools in the background. Hopefully you can't hear them, but there's people gardening. Do apologize. There is no secret that a lot of us have done this ascension journey alone. We all have kind of navigated it by ourselves, figured out what it meant, how we've started to integrate our gifts. But the simple fact is now we're realizing we don't have to. Like we can do it on our own. We've proved that, we've made that pretty clear to ourselves that we can easily do it. But that no longer has to be the way. And I think you described it perfectly. That's exactly what I wrote down before we got together, was kind of like a mugginess, a cloud, a heaviness. It feels like we've always had a knowing inside of us that there was a deeper mission, a deeper purpose, a greater
Mhm.
pathway. But to kind of navigate that in the human, it always felt like, say, clouded and disconnected and slightly like, oh, just figure that out. And like I always describe it as a puzzle piece. And it felt like we were only being shown certain puzzle pieces and
Mhm.
certain parts of the picture. So to actually navigate the full puzzle was quite a challenging task. And it feels like now we've finally been given the opportunity to look in a higher perspective. Now, I don't believe that perspective's there all the time for me right now. It's not there, that higher
Mhm.
perspective is not there 24/7, but I have so much more access to it to be able to choose to zoom out and choose to be able to go into them higher frequencies.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. I really appreciate that, and that makes a whole lot of sense. I feel like for me it was so much of a just a little spectrum of the view, knowing that I know I'm on this direct mission. I have no clue, like at this point, how that's going to get itself there. I'm just going to keep taking a step. But there was only parts of those puzzle pieces coming together at a time. You get a glimpse of it, you would take one step, and it was more directed into the self, knowing that the self could take care of it.
Yeah,
Which we have found that in the long run, if we're going to work towards unity consciousness, that is not gonna be beneficial for anybody.
yeah, exactly, exactly. It's
So
all great and well to be able to do it, but we've all then figured out our own way to do it, which is fantastic because we needed that self development, self reflection, time to expand. Like we needed to be able to fully step into our true selves. And I don't believe that with the place where our egos were at in comparison and feeling lack and insecurity, if we had been all around all these powerful, connected people in as ego state, it probably would have been a clash in communication and a clash in frequency. Whereas now we're able to step through as ego a lot more. We're able to step through the shadow. We're able to observe in more of a heart centered space and connect from the heart centered space rather than from the human ego. It allows the connections and the bonds and all of these deeper relations to connect without the lack of better words bullshit of the human. We don't need that. I just can't think of a better word. I was like, I'm just gonna have to go with
get
that.
it.
It's working. It feels like we get so caught up in all of that. We get so caught up in the feeling of not good enough. And I think that's so important
Yes.
because when we don't feel good enough, we criticize others, we compare against others, and it becomes not this beautiful connection and it becomes a competition. And so I think now we're able to shift through that. So many of us are able to shift through the perception of competition and perceived threat. It's more like, wow, how can we help each other? How can we support each other? What can I bring to your table that can really make your table flourish, and vice versa? And it feels so much lighter. That's the word I would use.
Absolutely, and
Mm.
very well, beautifully said at this point, very well. Yeah, it gave us the opportunity to really discover our unique puzzle piece and how that's going
Yep.
to be expressed, so that when we do come together, it could be like, oh, like I am equal to you, but this is the part that I play, and I'm not
Yes.
crossing over and stepping on other people's toes.
Yeah. And it is so
So,
beautiful to witness that, because I think for so long, even in the spiritual world, in the beginning of the awakening, I think that's why I didn't connect with the public kind of spiritual community, because there was a lot of ego and there was a lot of hierarchy and a lot of I'm better than you, and I because just because they'd awakened faster. And I'm not even saying it was intentional, it was just evident that that was there in a frequency thing, and people worshiping other people and giving the power away to other people. It just made me feel really uncomfortable, because I
mhm,
always have the perception that as beings living a human experience as a spiritual being, we are all equal. We are all connected from source. Some
yeah,
of us may have lived more lifetimes. Some of us may have different knowledge. Some of us may have different skills, but we are all equal in terms of what we value as a being. And I think this perception that we are better than others just because we are more ascended is one of the things that is really kind of falling away now as we go to co-collaborate. And it's looking and thinking, oh, actually, they're not better than us in any way. We're not lesser. We're all the
mhm,
same, like you say, but we've just got the most magical gifts that we can bring that can help each other activate.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Again, yes, I agree with that. And it's a beautiful process now because more of us are coming out to be seen. Um,
Mm.
because it was really uncomfortable for me too. I was like, I'm not going to be there, so
Yeah. Stay over here, do
I'm not
my
going to be there
thing.
right now. Exactly. When it breaks open, then I'll be okay. But yeah,
Yep,
so
exactly.
yeah, and so question with that, like how is the best format do you think for you and your choices and your perception of further connecting to that now, getting into collaboration? How do we connect with people?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And actually, reconnecting with you made me reflect a lot, because it re-sparked a remembrance of a feeling and a recognition that at the time it happened the first time, or one of the first times, I just didn't really understand it. And so it took me back to obviously the time of 2020 and 2021 and all the kind of watching people and knowing that I want to be doing that and I've got this information and I really want to be sharing stuff, but then making videos and deleting them and making accounts and shutting them down and just not feeling like I were able to be confident enough to be seen. And then, my higher self must I can't speak. One day must have just decided on behalf of me, and she was like, right, you've got to email Mark Atwood. So I sent Mark a massive email and
Hmm.
explaining everything I did in massive long detail. And I'd only watched him for a couple of weeks, so I'd not followed him for a long time, but it just felt like this pull. And it was just like, what's the worst case scenario? Just send him an email and see what he says, And so I did explain who I am and my age and what I'm trying to do here on the earth, basically. And he replied to my wealthy long email with, awesome, you must come on the show. And it was just so short, but I was like, oh my God. And when I received the email, it kind of shifted down back in my frequency, back into my human. And I really panicked. I was like, oh, shit. I was like, I
Uh-huh.
really went into fear of like, wow, this is too much too soon. And I really had to kind of sit with that for them 2 weeks before the recording. And it got rescheduled once, which I found synchronized too, because I was not in alignment to myself in terms of feeling comfortable to let myself be seen. And I remember going through the few days before I was coming up to the show and I was trying to get the website done. And I was thinking, just be self, because that's what you've done the whole time throughout this whole awakening is just be self. And long story short, connecting with Mark helped me to then connect with so many other beautiful light workers like Hune and Abby and Madeline. And then, the reason why I'm even in the USA today. And, then I was watching Honey's video the other day after speaking with Honey and seeing her here. And then obviously seeing you talking, and all of a sudden it was the same pull. It was that same kind of like, oh, I really have to get in touch with this person. This is really important. So again, message Honey, got in touch. And when we spoke afterwards, it was like that remembrance again, that feeling again of like, yeah, this feels so right. This feels so connected. That conversation was so activating. I'm so excited. There's so much like I can see then future doorways that open, in terms of what this means for the future with this person and other people connected with these people. So it really, the best way I can describe it is it's an urge, a feeling, and then when I act on that, it's like a lead. It leads me to where the pathway I need to go. So I do just really kind of trust my feelings and my impulses, and I always remember like what's the worst case scenario, what's the worst thing that can happen by sending an email. You can only not get a reply or get a not nice reply. There's not really much that can happen that's a negative thing. So sometimes it is worth taking the risk and kind of valuing yourself enough to say, I'm ready to be seen, I'm putting myself out there. And when you do that, the universe kind of goes, okay, there you go. And I think that's kind of the way I work with it.
Oh, yeah. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's a really good platform to like have an understanding for those of you who are feeling into this.
Mm-hmm.
For me, in my perspective, it's a really sharp knowing. Like I can't turn anywhere else. Like that's it. I've got to contact this person right now. My my visions will come in ahead of time, and so I can see the pathway point.
Nice.
And I want to hit that point because after that, then the expansion rate is massive. And if it's my soul family, it's my soul group, they're just going to exponentially increase my potential and our potential together on what we're doing here. So it's just really strong for me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think that's what we're kind of working towards is that getting the distraction of the human out of the way to be able to just go, yes, I'm feeling that. I know that, tuning in and going with that. And like you say, whether it's a knowing, a feeling, thinking about this person all the time or keep seeing them all the time, there's ways that this kind of gets brought up into your consciousness. And I would definitely recognize why I question everything. I'm like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is this coming up? What's this coming up? Why is this coming up? So I'm always questioning, and I think that's what kind of allows me to get more detail sometimes on what's going on around me and the things that are going on with around and within me. So asking why is a good thing as well. Asking why am I seeing this person all the time? Is it to connect with them, or am I just meant to receive the activations from them? Asking questions from the higher self is a great place to start as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. Getting really curious about it. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
get
love that
curious.
curious. Yeah, get curious and have an adventure with it. Be your own detective with it. And just to bring this down into like the human resonance as well, the humans love their patterns, and
Yeah,
so they're going to want to keep like taking you into old places. And when you start to feel that uncomfortable but that's somebody that you should see or it's an activation that you need, lean into that uncomfortable and be like, huh, this is uncomfortable. And also your intuition can be uncomfortable right now.
yeah,
That's another thing.
100%.
Yep,
That's
because your
so
intuition's like,
accurate.
yeah, exactly. It's like it's time to change. So there's something changing here. Let's make
Yeah, I
so
get this like agitation, like you gotta move, and I'm like, oh, really? Again? And like, you gotta move.
and you go through the process of oh fuck.
Yeah, fuck, and it really is like, okay, pack my bags, off I go.
Exactly. Exactly. Um,
Awesome.
it's also getting beautiful. It's more and more beautiful too to be able to see this process and how it's working, and knowing too that the human is understanding it enough to where the higher self and that soul frequency can move it at faster rates, and we're not
Yeah,
being stuck.
100%. Like that's one thing I struggled with was discerning between fear and intuition, like because sometimes I get a feeling like, no, I'm not meant to do that, or I'm not meant to go there yet, or I'm not meant to explore that. And that is a protection thing. It's a knowing, it's a you're not ready for that thing. But then when you have the fear and the comfortability of the fear of the unknown, fear of the change, fear of losing the safety and the familiarity, it was really discerning between which one's which, like is this fear and preventing me from expanding and preventing me from putting myself out there and being seen, or is this like intuition protection? And I really had to like work with which one is that coming up, and assess within myself. And I kind of always asked in, sometimes I use like a green light red light, or sometimes I just ask in like, show me the true vibrational frequency of this person or this place or this experience. And that was really useful to make my decision as well.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Mm.
That's a really good point to bring up to everybody because
Mm.
what is our fear and what is intuition and what's the driving force here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had to sit with that and be like, okay, because I am quite an anxious person. Not trying to affirm that, just sometimes I can be. And it's hard to balance, you know, as a spiritual person that's highly intuitive, but then also as a human that experiences heightened anxiety. I'm like, okay, which one is this today? And it's really kind of navigating between that heightened intuition and that heightened anxiety state and dysregulated nervous system. So I really focus on regulating the nervous system to regulate the anxiety, which then helped the intuition be more solid.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of your tips for regulating your nervous system?
Mhm. That's one thing I not struggle with, but it's been something that I suppose has been my biggest thing to heal because you know I had a lot of stomach problems. I was in hospital all the time from the ages of like 15 to 22. I was in the hospital like 8 times a year, 26 tablets a day, a lot of physical suffering. And you know I worked through the physical condition, I worked through then the detoxification and you know all the layers of the mind, body and soul, but then I was still experiencing not the extreme hospitalization pain, but and not the extreme panic attacks, but still a sense of dysregulation and heightened state of anxiety and living in a constant state of fight or flight. And it was really kind of enforcing the imposter syndrome that I had sometimes of how I can have so much knowledge and help so many people, but then still struggle so much sometimes to regulate my own nervous system. And I really had to like sit with that and work through that and see, okay, why, you know, questioning again, why, what's going on here. And there was multiple answers, there was multiple things and techniques and layers. And you know identifying the past traumas, the childhood traumas was a huge one for me because that was a lot of my triggers in being dysregulated were coming from childhood. So I had to work on them and do a lot of inner child work, and I do a lot of inner child work with other people because of like how intensely I work with my inner child and inner teen because she can be a fucker. There's that one as well. um, so we work with her too. And yeah, so I worked on a lot of the inner integration of self, the aspects of self. That really helped because I recognized which parts of my being are being dysregulated in that moment, you know. So my adult
Mhm.
is like, you're good, what's going on? And it's the inner child or the inner teen or a different aspect of self that was kind of crying out to be heard. So that was a lot of deep reflection to work with the inner parts of me to figure out the different parts of me that were being triggered. And then on more of a human level, I go outside a lot. I love nature. I breathe. I get outside. I barefoot on the ground. You know, I do sometimes still use plant medicine and,
Mhm.
you know, things like that to regulate my nervous system. But I also struggle with finding the balance of not excess. So that's also something I work with, you know, and I'm very open and honest about the things I navigate as a human because I think as a spiritual worker, as a spiritual being, living a human experience, we do go through difficult navigations. And I think the more we can show that to others and show how we navigate through them helps people feel like they're not alone and you know we're all going through this in a own way together. But yeah, I do use plant medicine, I use meditation, I use music a lot. If I'm really dysregulated,
Mhm.
music is a massive one for me. You know, just blasting music high frequency, and that really helps just tune into the body. Dance has
Yeah.
been a recent one. So I stopped dancing for a while. I used to be a dancer as a kid and teenager, and then it became more of a professional thing rather than a joy. So lately, I've just been moving my body, getting up and moving, and feeling like the stiffness when I start moving compared to when I stop moving. My body's in flow, so that really helps release the tension out of my body and just connect back in. But I could go on all day about that. Like I said, I've worked a lot on the nervous system, so it's kind of like something
Yeah.
I'm still working on a lot as well. So you know, it's one thing I focus a lot of my energy work, healing work on, you know, mind, body, soul healing, and then seeing the nervous system as almost a part of that, as a separate part of that too, because it was like a missing key for me. I was doing the mind, body, soul and still being dysregulated. So when I actually worked intentionally on the nervous system, that was a big game changer for me as well.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's all very useful.
Sorry for taking all the time.
It is very useful. I would say for me too, like it's got to be the nervous system first, working with the body. And
Yeah.
for me, it's very much so being extraordinarily present and knowing self and your aspects very well, because
Mm,
depending on what's flagging up, it's going to need another aspect or a different way of regulating the nervous system, whether that's listening to music or getting more in tune to spiritual or going out and digging in the mud or you know
mm,
so yeah, I would definitely say the nervous system is extraordinarily important, especially in this process and in this process right now what we're going
yeah,
through.
100%.
And I really appreciate your honesty and your authenticity because being real with this process is huge. It's huge to me
Mm,
too. Like if I'm having a real shit day and I'm just having a human situation, being able to be like, "Hey, this is what's happening and guess what? There are others having this too. This is not
yeah,
any different from somebody else's process. They're just in a different process." And so I
exactly.
really appreciate that about you. So thank you.
The light just agreed
I
with
was
you
like,
then. That was
"Whoa."
it. Whoa, okay. I just really illuminated up for a second. Mother Earth was like, "Yeah, I agree." I think it's important because just as the light is shining, the truth will shine. And if we have portrayed ourselves to be something else in this spiritual world, it's really bright. I really don't know why this is going that bright. Oh, that's a bit bad. There we go. If we've portrayed ourselves to be false or better than someone else in that God dynamic. I spoke about this a little bit on TikTok. And if we're in that kind of God dynamic, then we can't be authentically real. We can't then, oh, God, we're having a shit day. We need a bit of help because people, that's what happened in my inner group of friends and family. Like they expected me to be the one that's always regulating everybody else. So then when I was dysregulated, it was like a big shock to everybody because I'm not allowed to be almost, because we're the ones that are the stable and the ones everyone comes to for advice and support. So it doesn't leave much room for you to be the person needing support and advice and reflection. So I had to really consciously change that dynamic with my friends and family to know that I'm also allowed to be the person that needs the reflections and support and guidance, but knowing that I have to ask for that and be vulnerable enough to show that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think circling that vulnerability is something that's really great because that's really, I feel like, a massive step to really increasing your frequency and being able to truly express yourself and connect to others, having the ability to feel safe in vulnerability.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important parts of spiritual work. I kind of looked into it as I was doing, working with people, specifically with meditation, because I used to struggle going into guided meditations with other people. And I'd always wonder why, because I go pretty deep when I meditate on my own. So I was like, why can I not meditate with other people? And I realized it was the feeling of not feeling safe. And so when I then lead people through meditations or any form of guided journey, subconscious reprogramming, anything like that, the most important thing for me is to ensure that their whole aspect of self, physical, mind, body, and soul aspect, astral, feels safe and protected. And I have found a lot of people that say, "Oh, I can't meditate. I struggle to meditate. I struggle to go off." It is the same thing I was experiencing. Is it's they don't feel safe in self, and once having that reflection, whether it's from me or someone else, I've observed them experience safety and then allow themselves to go so deep into the subconscious world and into the astral realm. And I think that for me is the answer. If you're struggling to meditate, focus on feeling safe, focus on calling in your guides, your protectors, your cord, your energetic cords into the earth, your energetic protection. Focus on creating an environment of safety. Even just do meditations for protection and safety for the first few times until you feel comfortable in that environment, in actually allowing your body to relax so that your spirit can visit the astral realm. And I think that's why it's important to feel safe, because you're actually going somewhere, and so your body's like, no, I've got to stay safe, I've got to be protected, I've got to be consciously aware. And again, that's usually down to the trauma we've experienced and the lifetimes we've lived. So I would recognize how safe you feel to leave your body, like not unsupervised obviously because you've got your guides, but is that kind of the trigger to what's stopping you from going?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And I also feel like, at this point too, like it's okay to take your time with this, all of this, because we do store a lot of trauma and we do store the trauma from all of those parallels and places that we've been that we're currently right now. And creating this safe place in order to be able to do that allows us to continue that process. And it's a step process.
it is. I always remember seeing myself walking up a mountain and being told it's one step at a time, you can't run. And I remember thinking, like, so I was trying to run up that mountain, and there was like this, no, And I remember painting it on a rock that I found actually on a hike, and I found a rock that looks like, shaped like walking upwards. So I drew like a little mini mountain and me walking up the mountain. And I painted it on the rock, and I've still got the rock now because it says one step at a time, and it's my reminder that you can't run, you can't do this overnight. You don't expect a baby to be born and start walking. You understand that the bones have got to develop, the muscles have got to develop, and they've got to learn muscle memory and confidence and balance. And it's the same thing when we're going through this awakening ascension. Just because some of us might have done it before and we have more muscle memory, just because we started a bit earlier means we have more preparation. It doesn't mean it's a race. You know, we're all exactly where we need to be in divine timing and divine alignment to
Mm.
be that bridge or that builder or, you know, the balancing force for the new earth. And it really is coming into the physical world now. So I think going back to what we were saying at the beginning, just not being afraid to let yourself be seen and collaborate
Mhm.
with people that you feel aligned to collaborate with. That has to be the key there. The intention's got to be pure. It's got to be because it feels aligned and connected, not because it might be, you know, just a good thing to do. It's kind of, it's got, I think sometimes that's why the foundations aren't, that's why they don't necessarily bloom into what, you know, they should be, because the foundations aren't aligned. And I think making sure the foundations for any co-collaborative project that's making sure they're aligned is an important thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
agreed. What else might be important to this process? And we're talking about co-collaboration specifically. Do you have any other things that you'd like to bring up for co-collaboration?
I think trust is just kind of one of the overlapping and like the tying into what we've just been talking about. I think we needed to focus on trusting ourselves for a long time and actually
Mhm.
trusting ourselves in our own body, trusting us own guidance, trusting his own voice, you know, instead of just taking what someone else is saying or what we've read in a different article. We've been so used to being outsourced information for his whole lives that we had to do the reprogramming on insourcing, I call it, you know, getting the information from within rather than externally. And I always have that debate with people when they're like, well, where did you get this information? I'm like, from my higher self. You know, it does not come from
Yeah.
a book. And it's that knowing that I have full truth, that this information, I know where this comes from, because I actually trust it more from my higher self than I do from a book, because that's somebody else's interpretation, not mine. And I'd rather interpret it directly from source myself in my own way rather than seeing a Chinese whispered version. And again, it's not wrong. It's just I prefer my own interpretation. So I prefer getting information internally than externally. But the point I'm trying to make is trusting ourselves and then trusting others, that if we're brought together, if we're brought into alignment, just because we've been hurt in the past, which trust me, a lot of us have in a lot of ways, and we've been
Mhm.
betrayed and let down and attacked and, you know, all the different negative lower vibrational things from being a light worker that had too much trust on the wrong people, which has then caused a lot of us to be very, very guarded and very
Mhm.
restricted and limited with who we share what with. And I think it was for a reason. I think that was necessary. But I think now it's also remembering that we don't need to keep a fortress around our creative spark, around our ideas. You know, I noticed that when talking to you, I don't really share all my ideas for what I'm going to create with what I want to create with a lot of people. I definitely don't share it publicly because I don't want people to energetically lower the frequency, or,
Mhm.
you know, even in the human ego. Previously, my thoughts were, well, I don't want anyone to take my idea, you know, previously before in my ego. And now it's having the realization that this is all just a frequency. It's just a frequency. And that frequency is going to come to whoever's meant to receive it. And if the similar frequency or the same frequency is coming to someone else, and you can co collaborate to create that into the real world faster and easier and more beautifully, then why would we not be doing that? That's kind of like what I'm being experiencing in this moment. It's like, why would you do it on your own, even though you can, when you've got this other option to do it with this beautiful team of people, when it just requires trust? And I think
Mhm.
that was a big thing for me, is to go, not even consciously, but just to allow my inner self to surrender to being seen, to sharing vulnerably, and to allowing the possibility that other people can actually contribute to this in a beautiful way. Because I think one thing, without the ego sounding like it's being present, sometimes in the circle that I've been around that wasn't necessarily soul family, it felt easier just to do it on my own because I had the vision and I had the kind of alignment to be like, right, well, the frequency in which I'm coming at, it just felt easy rather than having to explain it and having to explain the whole frequency thing to people. It just felt easier just to do it myself. And so it became something where I just did it and didn't ask for help. And so I think that's what's shifting now, is remembering that we are now around people that can actually physically help and can hold space for us in a totally different way to the people that we've been around before.
Yes, absolutely. And that's just a massive shift in collective. So it's a celebration point because it took us some time to get there. I remember me not I didn't really want to collaborate with anybody because
Mhm.
of those
Yeah.
same reasons. And so I was like, all right, just gonna do this then. I'm just gonna do this and keep this at this frequency.
Yeah.
And the hard part about that is like it just gets very exhausting to not be able to
Tiring.
have a point with people where you can actually co-collaborate. And so now I feel like there is that little bit of a fear coming in together to be able to like work together because we haven't done it for a period of time and we
Yeah.
needed that period to work with ourselves. Um, but the trust piece is really big because if you're trusting yourself in all those aspects, then you know when you're coming in together with people that you can handle yourself and you could communicate and you can be able to work together in a way that's not overstepping.
Yep. Yes. Yes. So important. That's so, so important. It's that fear of, like you say, overstepping and taking over someone else and doing something wrong. And I think it has been so important just to clear out that pathway of allowing each other to help. I ran my own retreat in Spain last year and I really exhausted myself to the bone doing all the human things that I'm not meant to do. Like, that's not my speciality. I'm not here to be a travel agent or to look online for certain specifications of human stuff. Like, that's not my joy. Does not bring me joy. And it brought me stress and a lot of it. And I realized that by not outsourcing, by not asking for help, by not
Mhm.
creating room for other people to bring their gifts, their skills, I was not only making myself suffer, but I'm not allowing other people around me the opportunity to expand because I'm limiting their output because I'm not giving them the platform to do it by trying to do it all myself. I try to spin the 50 plates on my own. So I really learned that. I mean, I would not change anything about the way I did that because of everything I learned from it. But one of the biggest things, the biggest lessons I took from running that retreat was do not run another event trying to do every single thing yourself. Like, please outsource the responsibilities and delegate jobs to other people because they can share the vision and do it 10 times better than me because that's not my specialty. I'm there to do the energy work, that's not my
Yep.
thing. And so I really learned that on a human level that I'm not here to do them human thing. And it actually took away from me being able to do the planning for the energy work as much as I would have liked to because I was planning more of the human stuff. So, it took me away from the vision and creation rather than creating it in a more bigger way. So again, I learned from that and I learned the bigger expansions from that and to know that everyone has what's a pain to me is their joy and there can be a beautiful exchange going on, if we're just open ourselves to receiving.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. And how does that realization feel to you?
Well, it's painful at the time. I'm not gonna lie to you. By the time I go through
Fair.
it, it's fucking painful, and I'm like, really, why this shit again? And I resist. I think it's because my human's a control freak, and I try in the human to control everything, not intentionally, not consciously, but just fucking do. And it's just there, the intention to control, to kind of like I said, make sure it's done right with the right vision. And I think it's because I care so much, and when you care so much, you're trying to do it so perfect, but then what I learned was to let go. I preach about going down the stream in the water in the wave, and in other aspects of my life, I do just flow with it. But then I suppose sometimes I didn't, and that was what I learned. That the times where I didn't is the times where it's more challenging, more difficult, not universally and divinely aligned because I'm forcing a square into a circle, and that's what I've realized now. To just step back a little bit, zoom out, the realization was kind of difficult to integrate because it's letting go of familiarity and safety. I had to control everything to be safe. And so that was my inner child's way of ensuring that every next step is protected if I'm in control of it. And so letting go of that was letting go of the ensuring that I'm safe. And so it was a big reflection to a big expansion to let go of, a big part in the program to let go of, because it was the feeling of,
Yeah.
am I going to be safe going through these next chapter? And if anything, I realized that how limiting myself I was and how stepping through that restriction is just like stepping out of old shoes that don't fit you anymore and getting new ones that just are a lot more comfortable and shiny and a lot more it feels
Yep.
like a new frequency that's not old and familiar. It's now new and representative of you, who you are now, and allowing your potential to be seen. I like that analogy. That was cool. But yeah, that's
Yeah, that was
that's
great.
kind of that's kind of like what I see. Yeah, that's what it feels like. It's not pleasant. It's not a joyful experience going through the expansions. But then once I've been through it, it's joyful then. I get there in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. That was a great analogy. I was like, "Get it."
I'm so glad.
All right. Well, this has been a great chat. This feels like the energy is coming down to a pull. So I really,
Um,
truly appreciate you. And if you do have anything else to say before we close,
Yeah, no, I'm really grateful for us connecting and, the way that you navigate this conversation. It was really beautiful. And I realize I've taken up a lot of time, so I do apologize for that. But it's been beautiful just to kind of be with new energies and share my experiences and share my reflections with you and, all your beautiful people. And just to really feel the difference in frequencies, working with different people and how beautiful everyone's different frequency is and what that emits to us. And I think there's going to be some really beautiful things that come from this. So I'm really excited to connect and to just see where this goes. And I'm really grateful for your space holding. It's very beautiful.
uh, yeah, thank you. I'm so excited for this collaboration. I had felt it coming for a period, and then I just, I let it go and waited until it was like the right moment. And so I'm really grateful for you. I'm really grateful for your honesty and your authenticity, and really just driving into yourself what you need to in order to really express yourself in the way you want to. So it
Thank
makes me
you.
extraordinarily happy that we've had this conversation and that you got to take up some space in a space that felt safe to do so.
Yeah,
So
no, it's so beautiful. Thank you.
yeah,
Very
yeah.
relevant to the conversation we was talking about. So very beautiful. Thank you.
Exactly, exactly. So, and I'm very excited to
Awesome.
see where this goes because it's going to be great.
Me
I
too.
can feel it
Me
and see
too.
it.
I
Yep.
look
All
forward to it.
right. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you, everybody. We love you.
Bye, beautiful people.
Bye.